I was just sitting here thinking about my great-grandmother, Jenny Longest Norman. She lived to be nearly 96. I was a pallbearer at her funeral. She was a family matriarch, ruling with an iron fist inside a velvet glove. But she was dearly loved, and I know I continue to miss her. And because my interest in genealogy developed early, Grandma Jenny and I had several conversations about the family. And I even interviewed her once on tape. But this week, sitting in my rocking chair and letting my mind wander over the events that are currently shaping our reality, I remembered a story Grandma Jenny told me. We were talking about her father-in-law, Old Man Joe Norman, she called him, my great-great-grandpa, and the fact that he died during the flu outbreak back after the First World War. He didn't have the flu, she told me, but he died right along with everybody else who did. Grandma Jenny lived in Biscoe, Virginia, with her husband Sam. And the houses out in the country back then were seldom in sight of each other, but you still kept track of your neighbors and what they were doing. And during the devastating outbreak of Spanish influenza, back about 1918 to 1920, folks tried to avoid contact with other folks. Now, usually it wasn't hard to do, but when one person came down with the flu, the rest of the household usually followed soon after. And sometimes entire families would be bedridden and unable to perform the smallest of tasks. And when Jenny's neighbors got sick, Sam went to their farm and built a shelf out of planks on the outside of the house under one of the ground floor windows. It was like an extension of the windowsill. And it was on this shelf that neighbors could leave food for the family without risking contact by going to the house. I had to laugh when I realized that my great-grandparents were masters of social distancing before it was a hashtag. The COVID-19 pandemic currently sweeping the planet may be a new strain of virus, but pandemics and epidemics themselves are nothing new. Archaeologists have discovered evidence of mass illness as long as 5,000 years ago in China. In every age since, humans have dealt with widespread outbreaks of infectious disease. And it's only been understood in the last century about what causes these diseases and how to effectively limit our chances of exposure to them. I mean, imagine the fear and confusion of plague victims in the 14th century, believing their illness and death was a judgment of God. So what did early Christians think about epidemic diseases? How did mass burials and daily calls of bring out your dead affect them? How would it affect us? Do we see coronavirus as the wrath of God? Will God protect those who believe in Him? Will God help those who help themselves? Or maybe we're just all doomed. Julian of Norwich was one of those early Christians. She was a 14th century anchorite and mystic whose real name is not known. She likely took her name from the Church of St. Julian in Norwich, East Anglia, where she maintained her cell. Julian was 6 years old in 1348 when a sailor arrived in Weymouth, Dorset, bringing with him an illness from France. In less than a year, the Black Death covered the entire island nation. As much as 60% of the population of England died from plague within 2 years. And when Julian was 19 years old, the plague returned, but this time killing only 1 in 5 people living in Britain. In May of 1373, when she was 30, Julian fell ill and was not expected to live. A curate came to administer last rites in anticipation of the inevitable. And when the cleric held the crucifix above the foot of the bed, Julian began to lose her sight and to feel physically numb. And she saw the figure of Christ on the cross begin to bleed. And over the next several hours, she had 15 visions of Jesus, and a 16th on the following night. Well, Julian did recover from her illness, and she recorded her visions in a work entitled 16 Revelations of Divine Love. And though Julian was the first known woman to write a book in English, the work went largely unknown for 200 years and didn't reach any widespread circulation until the early 20th century. The themes which run most noticeably through her writing are the motherhood of God and God's mercy towards a weak humankind. She wrote, "So Jesus is our true mother in nature by our first creation. And he is our true mother in grace by his taking our created nature." Well, Julian's visions included conversations with Christ, in which Jesus assured her that God is more pleased with man's atonement for sin than he is displeased by man's fall from grace. Jesus tells her that sin is necessary, but he also reassures her that all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of thing shall be well. Would to God that might be our mantra in the coming days. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Well, Julian's visions provided a comforting view of God's predisposition for kindness and love towards mankind. Something many may have doubted in England's troubled Middle Ages, and something we may even question today. But that didn't mean that God would make our lives blissful and devoid of challenge or danger. That's not what God does. God has given us our lives to live, and his creation in which to do it. How we go about it is our choice. Our choice born of our God-given free will. In the record of her final vision, Julian of Norwich recounted a conversation with Christ in which he assured her of God's love toward mankind. She wrote, "He said not, 'Thou shalt not be tempested, thou shalt not be travailed, thou shalt not be diseased.' But he said, 'Thou shalt not be overcome.' and we shall not be overcome. God loves us, and God has given us everything we need to succeed. And while failure is an option, it's not part of God's plan for us. We simply must believe that all shall be well, and all shall be well, and every manner of thing shall be well. And then we need to make it so. So pray for those affected by coronavirus. Pray for those putting their own health and safety on the line to serve those who are stricken. Pray for the wisdom of those in positions of power and policy making. Pray for those who live alone and are now more isolated and lonely than before. Pray for our parish. Just pray for simply everyone. Pray for the strength and courage to do what we must, to continue to live for Christ and for each other. And then do it. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well.